Thank you very much. So all we hear about every day these days is AI. It's all we've heard about this morning. So it's easy to feel the hype, but the question is it overhyped or actually not hyped enough? So what's the case for overhyped?
So, if I got this right,
Yes.
we're smart enough to invent AI, dumb enough to need it, and so stupid we can't figure out if we did the right thing. We don't know.
So the panic is real, right? Earlier this month, a macro research shop called Citrini Research, one most people had never heard of, published a blog post describing a possible AI-driven recession. It wiped hundreds of billions off the stock market. A single viral post on LinkedIn, Matt Schumer's "Something Big is Happening," did the same thing to SaaS valuations. But the evidence is a little scarce. This kind of panic ignores the facts. We've seen the same panic in every single technology disruption in history. And most recently, actually, reports are showing that we're hiring more software engineers than ever. We're also seeing companies valued on AI promise, not value delivery. The hype cycle is real, and we're in the thick of it. When there are trillions of dollars being invested, the return has to do the same, and that inevitably leads to that hype. That means we're slapping AI on everything. We're just sprinkling it with these sparkly icons, right? Every product, every pitch deck, every company update now leads with AI powered. Most of it is incremental at best. The jagged edge of AI means that it's great at some things and terrible at others. And too many companies are papering over the cracks with marketing. And here's where it gets personal for product people. We fall into this platform trap. I was at an event not too long ago where the panel, mostly old media companies, were laser focused on how SEO was going down, and so they had to move to GEO. They were literally trading one platform dependency for another. And this is what short-term thinking looks like. So it's no wonder we feel like this every morning when we open our news feeds. But I think we're asking the wrong questions. And that's because we're terrible at predicting the future. In 2016, Geoffrey Hinton, arguably the most important figure in AI, a man who would later go on to win the Nobel Prize for his contributions to AI, stood in front of an audience and made a prediction.
I think if you work as a radiologist, you're like the coyote that's already over the edge of the cliff, but hasn't yet looked down, so doesn't realize there's no ground underneath it. People should stop training radiologists now. It's just completely obvious that within 5 years, deep learning is going to do better than radiologists because it's going to be able to get a lot more experience. It might be 10 years, but we've got plenty of radiologists already.
Well, that sounds scary. As I said, Geoff Hinton isn't just any other pundit, right? He's the godfather of deep learning. Now, it turns out he wasn't wrong about the technology. AI is remarkably good at reading medical images. Today, there's over 1,000 FDA-cleared AI radiology devices. AI mammography screening detects 29% more cancers while reducing workloads by 44%. So what did happen to all those radiologists? It's been 10 years. Well, it turns out they're doing better than ever. In those 10 years, we actually, in the US, have 16% more radiologists than we did 10 years ago. And you'd think, okay, well, AI is replacing a lot of that value, right? So salaries have gone down. Actually, salaries have gone up 44% on average. So what happened? Well, it turns out AI didn't replace radiologists. It just made imaging so much cheaper and faster that we do a lot more of it. More scans mean more findings means more follow-up, more treatment planning, more complex interpretation, more demand for radiologists, not less. It turns out, as we heard a bit earlier, when something is cheaper, faster, and more efficient, we actually do a lot more of it. And we have seen this before. In 1865, an economist called William Stanley Jevons noticed that James Watt's new steam engine was so dramatically more efficient, but we ended up using more coal, not less. And this is Jevons' paradox, as we heard earlier. When you make something that's cheaper and more efficient, you don't do the same amount of it, you do vastly more of it. And this is playing out everywhere AI touches. But there's a related law as well, which comes from the futurist Roy Amara, who stated that people tend to overestimate the short-term impact of new technologies while underestimating the long-term impact. So what's the case for underhyped?
I think one of the assumptions of just our economic and political debates is that growth is hard to achieve. It's this unicorn. There are all kinds of ways you can kill the golden goose. We could enter a world where growth is really easy, and it's kind of the distribution that's hard because it's happening so fast.
So we have to remember that this is an overnight success that's been 70 years in the making. The Turing test was devised in the 50s. AI was first coined in 1955, and we've been building to this moment ever since. We're only getting started. ChatGPT broke this, launched 3 years ago, 3.5. In that time, the world's best coders are saying AI is better than they are at certain tasks. 90% of Claude code right now is being written by Claude itself. The best models are testing at something like 140 IQ. Einstein was 160, and that's probably a theoretical max for human intelligence, but we don't know if there is one for AI. And AI is now generating novel mathematical proofs, which proves that they're genuinely reasoning, not just pattern matching. All that to say, today's AI is the worst AI you're ever going to use. Every model you use from here on out is going to be better. And by the way, we're still typing prompts into chat boxes. This is not to call out Claude. I love Claude, by the way. But this is still our primary interface, which kind of blows my mind. Imagine if we'd invented airplanes and said, oh, well, let's just chat to the airplane and type in a type box. We have these complex UIs and interfaces for a reason, right? We are visual beings, and so I think we haven't invented the UI of the future yet. We're still in the typing commands into DOS mode of AI. Then you have to think about what the cost curve looks like. As Sam Altman said, the cost to use a given level of AI is dropping 10x every 12 months. And we've seen that before, too. When Google launched Gmail in 2004, they launched with 1 gigabyte of storage. They launched in April, and everyone actually thought this was an April Fool's joke, because their competition had 2 or 4 megabytes of storage at the time. But Google wasn't betting on the storage cost of the day. They were betting on the storage cost of the future. Around 2000, storage cost about $12 a gigabyte. By the time Gmail launched, it was closer to $1, and today it's about a penny. So we have to ask ourselves the same question about AI. What if models become commodities? What if the cost of tokens goes to 0? What if the cost of building software goes to 0? These aren't hypotheticals, because this is the trajectory that we're already on. And we already know what happens when costs collapse, because Jevons paradox. Demand explodes, new markets open, value gets created in places nobody expects. And this keeps showing up because the demand for solving human problems is essentially infinite. When you reduce the cost of solving one problem, you don't run out of problems, you just unlock the next layer. So I'm going to argue that AI is underhyped. This is not about replacement. This is not about less. This is about doing more demand, about abundance. So what does this mean for our products? Well, first of all, we have to stop treating AI as just a feature and start treating it as a multiplier. Too many organizations are flailing around, chasing AI features, bolting on chatbots, optimizing prompts. They're treating AI as a feature, not as a force to drive their strategy. Now, as you heard in the opening, I've been building stuff online for about 30 years. I co-authored a book called Product Leadership, mainly as an excuse to go interview hundreds of product leaders from around the world. And since then, I've advised over 150 portfolio companies. And I want to zoom out and kind of share what makes the most successful ones successful, which is I think every organization has to be able to answer 5 questions. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What matters right now on that journey? What are the actions we're going to take to get there? And how do we make those choices? Now this is important because it ladders from the top down by asking how, right? How are we going to get there? Well, here's the actions and so on. But even more importantly, it connects from the bottom up. So when we have empowered teams and they ask us questions like, why are we doing this? We can connect it all the way up to that outcome. I call this the decision stack. And I use vision, strategy, objectives, OKRs, and principles to answer those questions. But the most important thing is not that you use these tools. If you don't like OKRs, that's fine. Use something else. But you have to be able to answer the questions. And this is important because in most organizations I go into, it looks something like this. They have a lot of these pieces, but none of them actually connect. Or even worse, they think they have a strategy, but the rest of the organization has no idea what that is. And the reason I wanted to zoom out is I think too many organizations are doing that AI sprinkling down here at the opportunity layer. They're focusing on those features. They're focusing on little cool things that we can build. When actually they need to be moving up the stack and rethinking their strategy. We have to ask what AI makes possible instead of being focused on what we can deliver. So some good case studies here. Intercom, if you don't know them, a help desk tool. In 2022, the original founder came back into the business, saw that it had basically flatlined on growth. They were, a poster child for SaaS, but they weren't really going anywhere. And a few months after he came back, ChatGPT launched. And they took a step back and realized that Gen AI was probably going to drastically cut what help desk looked like, right? They're probably going to cut the amount of people doing the work, probably going to do a lot of that work for them. And so they could have done what everyone else does, which is bolt a chatbot onto their existing product, stick their per-seat pricing model, and hope for the best. But instead, they reinvented themselves from the ground up. They built Fin under a completely separate brand, completely separate team, which is a fully end-to-end AI customer service agent that now resolves over 1 million customer tickets a week. But the real move wasn't even the technology, it was their pricing model. They moved from a per-seat model to a 99 cents per resolution pricing model. So customers only pay when the tool actually solves a customer problem. Think about what that means strategically. They went from a model where more customer problems equals selling more seats. Those are misaligned incentives, right? The company's not really interested in helping you solve your customer problems if they want to have you have more help desk seats. Their new model means better resolution equals more revenue, much more aligned with their customers. And revenue has started growing massively. Fin alone went to over 100 million ARR in less than a year, and their core business has actually been growing back at 20% year on year because of the overall effect. Another example is a small Swedish startup called Kive, which we invested in when I was at EQT back in 2020. The founder is a former film director, and he started Kive as a smarter way for creatives to automatically organize their asset libraries. So if you imagine most commercial film shoots or photo shoots, it starts with, you do a bunch of pre-planning, you're scoping out the shoot, then you fly somewhere to do the actual shoot with a crew. He was working with customers like Polestar, so you're also flying a car out there. Then you come back and you have hundreds of thousands of assets that you have to figure out what's the good bits, how am I putting these together, how do I want to edit this? And so he's literally building a point solution using machine learning. Remember, AI before AI was cool. He was using machine learning to build that asset library so you can much more easily find the things you wanted. Again, when ChatGPT broke in 2022, he spent the weekend playing with it and then came back to his team and said they're throwing the entire product out because he'd realized that the entire workflow for all of their customers was going to change. Instead of doing all those expensive bits in the middle, someone was just going to do the planning, generate an asset, and ship it. And he wanted to be where that happened. So today, Kive helps those brands like Polestar generate their assets from scratch. Imagine the cost savings he's giving to these brands. You're not flying expensive prototypes from the factory in China all the way to South Africa because it looks pretty on photos, doing a week or two of photo shoots and film shoots, doing another week or two of editing, production, and shipping it. Kive lets them do it from their desk. So Nassim Taleb, he wrote the book Black Swans. He has this concept of anti-fragility. Systems that don't just survive shocks, but get stronger because of them. He uses this image. Wind extinguishes a candle, but it fuels fire. So the question is, are you the fire or are you the candle? We don't know exactly how AI is going to play out. Nobody does. We've even seen that a Nobel Prize winner can get it wrong. But don't bet everything on one prediction. You have to build for optionality. You have to protect your core, but make bets on radically different approaches. So as product people especially, we have to stop asking, how do we add AI to what we already do? And we have to start asking, can we solve the customer problem in a completely different way? We have to start asking what wasn't feasible but now is. Product's always been good at managing this feasibility risk, right? But that calculus has changed. We have to start asking, can our business model change completely? Like Intercom, moving from seats to resolutions, moving beyond SEO and search engine arbitrage. What does outcome-based pricing look like in your world? We have to start asking what demand is currently locked up that AI could unlock. This is the Jevons paradox question, right? What would your customers do with your product if it was 10 times cheaper, 10 times faster, or 10 times more accessible? And we have to start asking, what can we now build that was impossible before? As Wayne Gretzky said, you want to skate to where the puck is, not where it's been. And related to this is this kind of meme that's going around about SaaS being dead, right?
Twitter says SaaS tools are dead. Okay, I like that. We could buy code our own tech stack. I don't want to. I built a scheduling tool. We have a scheduling tool. Now it's not working. Ooh, payments. No, we are not going to pay 2.9% and 30 cents on every transaction. No, sir. Hey, you just shared all our users' credit card information. Oh, you're still here. Get out, you're fired. Sounds good. How much are your API costs? About 500. How much was the tech stack? About 200. Hey, you. Build a new CRM.
So there is a build-buy shift, right? Every tech organization is looking at this, like, should we build our own or should we buy something? And that calculus has changed because it is cheaper than ever to buy. But I think the impact is smaller than we think. We have to remember that we are in a massive tech bubble. The fact that you are here and excited about AI and everyone put their hand up about using Anthropic means you're a tiny, tiny percentage of the world. Each dot here represents over 3 million people. And you can see that only 0.04% of the world has actually tried AI coding tools. Only 0.3% have actually paid anything for AI. 16% have tried, the free bots, but 84% has still never even used AI. And most of the world doesn't want to build software. They want the thing that the software enables. A restaurant manager is not going to go build their own point-of-sale system, payment stack, and inventory management system, no matter how good the coding tools or agents get. They want something that's easy to use, customizable to them, and as out of the way as possible so that they can focus on their customer experience. The same is true for accountants, estate agents, logistics coordinators, gym owners, all of these non-technical roles just want a bit of software. And we have to distinguish between what makes sense when we're using probabilistic software over deterministic, right? AI and agents are amazing, and I think they are going to have a massive impact. That restaurant software might have an agent in it that can go do tasks for them. But they're not right for every single use case. And they're still incredibly expensive at scale, even though that cost curve is coming down. So a lot of the time, boring old deterministic SaaS software is the right call. So the danger of making predictions, when I just said that we can't make predictions, but I think SaaS is nowhere near dead. Internal tooling for tech companies might be at risk because we can all kind of roll our own now. But I think those core value drivers, business critical systems, systems of record, consumer kind of level SaaS, probably isn't as at risk as people think. I do think there will be increased competition, and I think suddenly every single niche is super competitive, right? We're going to see a lot of noise. We're going to see an explosion of software. And I think what we're seeing in the market is just them reacting to realizing that every SaaS company has to change, but they don't know which ones will. So what does this mean for how we work? Well, as we've heard, AI does make everything faster. But speed was never the problem. I'd argue, and in the companies I go into, we've been pretty good at shipping stuff, right? We can build stuff really quickly. We're going to get even faster at it, but that was never the problem. We can go look at physics and talk about the distinction, right? So speed is a little bit like setting jet fuel on fire. It's pretty spectacular. Might go warm your hands a little bit, but it's not actually getting you anywhere. Velocity is speed with direction. So it's putting that jet fuel into a jet engine and going somewhere. And so AI will give you speed, but you need a clear strategic direction for their team to actually capitalize on that. You need both. And that direction comes from the market. This comes from all those soft skills that we're really good at, right? Talking to our customers, understanding the users, understanding the market, understanding where the market is going, and bringing those data and insights into the conversation. So I think speed, direction, discovery is all about us being able to move up the stack. We're going to have less conversations about this feature versus that feature, and more conversations about those strategic choices we have to make as a business. So to wrap up, we can't predict the future, and we do have to be honest with ourselves. There's going to be a lot of change, right? Jeff Hinton may have gotten it wrong, but there is going to be a lot of disruption. It's going to be scary, it's going to be ugly, but it's not all doom and gloom. I think there's a massive gap between one founder and an army of agents, that billion-dollar one-person company. And actually now they're even talking about the billion-dollar zero-person company. But I think there's a massive gap between that and needing 10,000 employees to run a mid-level SaaS company. That just seems inefficient even before AI came along. And so the reality for us is probably going to land somewhere in between. The question isn't whether disruption's coming, it's whether we take it as an opportunity to do something better. Because every major technology shift has followed the same pattern. First, predictions of doom, then short-term disruption, and then long-term abundance. We're somewhere between 1 and 2 today. And the temptation is to stay focused on that doom scrolling, right? To panic about what AI might take away. But again, I think we're asking the wrong questions. Because I believe that abundance could lead to a software renaissance. I think we're going to see hybrids between probabilistic and deterministic software. I think we're going to see these hyper niches, right? We've seen already SaaS going more and more niched. It's going to be even more hyper niched. We're going to see these concepts in UX around malleable software or self-evolving software. We'll see agents doing amazing things. We'll probably be building software for agents, but this is all software. So Hinton gave radiologists 5 years, and instead they got abundance. My challenge to you is, what will you do with yours? Thank you very much.